Your rig is where you work, where you rock out. Your rig is your livelihood. So when that DPF light comes on, give your rig the respect it deserves. As for Road Warrior, stronger seals, better manufacturing, and it's made of metal that lasts. Less downtime and more miles on the road so you can haul longer. Respect the rig. Become a Road Warrior.
Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is a show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Long Haul, where we talked about the stuff that really matters to folks behind the wheel and behind the business. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, and today we're running another third and long style episode, and you know what that means. It's fast, it's real, and we call on audibles all the way through. Today, I've got my co-host, Kaylee Nix.
Hey, guys.
We got a lot to unpack this.
We're back again.
We back again. The last one was pretty fire, though.
We got a little spicy, I think, with the last one. We ruffled some feathers, but we did exactly what we set out to do, which was just that. And I think if you know Adam by now, you know that we're not going to sit down, we're not going to shut up, and we're going to say what we think and say what we feel. And that's why I'm glad to be back with you.
And I'm glad that you're back with us. So today, we're going to dig into tariffs. We're going to talk a little bit about fake ELDs, about drivers getting arrested. Something's going on in Chicago. We're going to talk about that and got the whole city fired up. Well, I was just down there a couple of weeks ago. We're going to talk about what's really happening out there, not just in the headlines, but in the day-to-day, how this industry runs. From the 25% tariffs on imported trucks to the crackdown on non-domiciled CDLs to the ripple effects of running legal versus running reckless. This episode got a little bit of everything, so I'm excited to get started into it. And yeah, we're going to address something too. So you want to stay tuned in this one because there's some noise out there and there's some calling out that we're going to address on that too. But let me just say this. If fairness and truth sound different to you, you might be on the wrong frequency. And you're going to want to stay tuned on this one. So sit back, grab your coffee, whatever you're drinking. Let's break this thing down the way we do, unfiltered, unapologetic. And before we get started, make sure you like, share, and subscribe wherever you're listening. And don't forget to jump on the Long Haul newsletter at www.freightwaves.com/playbook so you never miss any of the deep dives. All right, let's kick this off.
You know, Adam, it's postseason baseball. Okay, it's October. October's very own. We're in postseason baseball. Life wouldn't be good if we weren't catching some curveballs every now and then. But if you look back to the last 10 months, the entire Trump administration and their trade policy has been a curveball for the freight industry. Our latest news, no exception. Right at the end of September, Trump went on Truth Social and said, hey, we're going to slap a tariff starting October 1st on all imported trucks. And the internet went crazy, as it typically does. And now we're sitting here the second week of October, and that 25% tariff has been pushed back to the start of November, but still going to go into effect and is now aimed at a different section from a Department of Commerce investigation that they did earlier this year, making it a little bit more legal and actually likely to stick this time. Let's talk about it. 25% tariff on imported medium and heavy duty trucks. Aim of this is to focus on manufacturers and add a little bit more support to our U.S.-based manufacturers, particularly Peterbilt and Kenworth. Parent company PACCAR, talk to me about it.
Man, listen. So I'm gonna talk out of both sides. Long term, there's benefits in terms of where onshore production can do, right? So that's that part, and I mean that's the benefit. The cons behind that is okay. Well, with globalization and with parts being sourced everywhere, the ability to get cheaper and things like that. It doesn't make people feel good when it comes down to buying. So when you look at companies, and one of the things that I worry about, well, you look at Freightliner, and most of their stuff's made in Mexico. Are they protected by the trade deal that we have in place from Mexico? And is that going to make a difference when it comes down to it? Because if you look at it, you said Peterbilt and Kenworth and PACCAR and all that, but when you look up and down the highways, Freightliner got a lot more trucks going up and down the highway. So you look at the large companies that got orders that are already in place, those are ones that's going to be impacted by that. But I wonder if that's going to impact them in pricing. And it's just so much. But then again, November 1st comes and he probably say, yeah, I was just kidding.
So the interesting point about this is, I think we touched on it the last episode. If you're a small player in the space, if you're an owner-op, if you run a small fleet, you're likely not looking at investment in new equipment anyways right now. Interest rates continue to be ridiculously high. The used truck market is still propped up a little bit with the majority of sales right now. So how much does a 25% tariff really impact you? Or are you feeling it on the secondary wave, right? Are you feeling it where now, okay, your big fleets have equipment they want to retire and they want to push out. Now they're doing it because they're doing it by choice, not because they're being forced to do it by green regulation emissions restrictions, which could be good or bad depending on who you ask. But now you're sitting here and saying, I'm waiting for the trickle-down effects for my fleets. Are my larger fleets going to sell the equipment now at a higher cost in order to make up the 25% now from purchasing equipment that's maybe not made in the US? And then on the flip side, are they going to delay purchasing new equipment overall? And is that going to put stress on the used truck market?
The second part. I was going to say the second part. You hit the second part on the head. I would imagine that these companies are going to stretch it out just a little bit further, try to get a little bit more miles out of what they currently have. And what that does is that lowers the overall, I hate to use the word again because we use it all the time, capacity, but it lowers the overall capacity of inventory that's sitting at the used truck lot. When you do that, and then you have a market that has to come back to recovery, now you have more people buying used trucks, but the availability of trucks are not there. And when that happens, that makes used truck prices go up just by natural occurrence.
So you hit on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, which is still the binding trade agreement that is in place from our North American partners. As you mentioned, the majority of our truck manufacturing, the parts maybe are coming in through Mexico, they're assembled, and then you have 89, 90% finished trucks moving into the U.S. A lot of these manufacturers are doing last parts assembly here on U.S. soil, but maybe initial parts across the border.
Yep.
We don't really know if we're covered underneath these tariffs or not. We don't know if USMCA takes precedent, or now that we're going under Section 232 of our trade agreements, if now that removes it from USMCA. There's really not a lot of clarity, which begs the question, is this the right way to do policy?
And nobody knows. And that's the thing. It's like so gray because you have the USMCA and that clearly would protect us in this environment. But then there's a loophole that's saying, well, maybe, maybe not. Is that really the way to do policy, though? Is that really, here's the thing. These tariffs are last episode, we're talking about farmers and how it's going to impact farmers and how it's negatively impact farmers, regardless of what, political aisle you stand on. Farmers saying, hey, it's hurting. Trump said, hey, you know what? Here's some money. He already said that, hey, I'm going to give you some bread because I see you're hurting out here.
Right.
So when you flip it over here into the trucking industry, as well as it's already compressed, when it comes to the new truck marketplace, the folks that listen to this call don't necessarily have to be impacted by it because it's new. So you're going to take a $200,000 truck, now it's $225,000. So now your cost of operations have changed that much as a major carrier. The biggest thing behind us is that, does this cause a behavior to where you're going to have owner operators and fleet owners, which I hope don't say, hey, I don't know what's going on. I was planning on buying a truck the first of the year. Maybe I should go ahead and buy a truck now. That's my only concern. Like, does it trigger panic buying? And I don't even want to say it's panic buying because, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, is it?
But how much panic buying can you do in, the tariffs set to go into effect November 1st? 3 weeks?
I mean,
how much can you do?
I mean, equipment news said that with all of the tariffs going in place and with 100% depreciation taking place, they feel like Q4 is just going to be a bomb quarter when it comes down to heavy equipment and that's what they're saying.
And you know what? The manufacturers would love to see that to boost up those end of year results before they release for the end of 2025 after what's been a really continued tough year for them. Why not?
Hey, you know what? This is, you marry that up with, and then now that turns into more open deck freight, that turns into more so it's not I don't want to call it a win-win, but it's almost like a win and then, a close loss. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, okay, cool. If we're able to get this out here where 100% depreciation, you want to take advantage of that, boom. You want to take advantage of the fact that tariffs is going to go in place, you might want to buy now. Do we get a surge of trucks in? Do we get a surge of truck purchases? But then now do we have sitting idle trucks? It's just so many things that goes into that conversation.
It's like a tie in the NFL after both teams score 47 points. Like you played all of that offense for what?
For nothing.
For nothing.
Yeah, for nothing. So that's where we're at.
So let's move on to our second topic, which of course continues to take the internet and the freight sphere by storm. And we are seeing more and more and more momentum build around the issue of non-domiciled CDLs. Since the last time we talked, the U.S. Department of Transportation has come out and actually put forward some true policy around this. We saw Secretary Sean Duffy now come out and say verbatim, we are not issuing new non-domiciled CDLs anymore. Since then, we've got a handful of states that have walked back their regulations. Oregon in particular has become pretty tough now, saying not only are they not issuing new non-domiciled CDLs or issuing renewals, they're also not going to institute upgrades or transfers or to do anything that has to do with any type of non-domiciled restriction. Let's bring this in because now we're seeing a trickle-down effect from arrests and enforcement, which was always the big question for us. Talk to us a little bit about what's been going on since then.
So a couple of things that my stance on the whole non-domicile approach is that I just felt all along that it shouldn't have took place. I just don't agree with that. I believe that as a CDL license holder myself, I believe that it's a sacred, thing that it needs to be protected because it's one of those federal mandated licensing that we have to do a lot of work to get. So
clarify that point. You're saying that non-domiciled CDLs should never have been issued in the first place. Not that the problem of enforcing them shouldn't have been brought up.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
The issuance of them themselves. Now, what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is we talked about this. ICE as an administration, well, as an actual body, it has one of the largest budgets in the world. I mean, I think it's larger than the Marines or something like that in terms of the amount of money that's invested in them. We have seen immigration step up in places that have been hot pocket freight fraud, freight shaky stuff happening, aka Chicago, popped up a couple of days ago. Well, by the time you listen to this, it may be more than a couple of days. But what it did and what it does is it created scarcity. And that raid alone, one of the raids in Chicago was 37 drivers, right? Middle of the night, boom, gone. 1,000 trucks gone. Now, 1,000 of those trucks were box. They said there was a lot of box trucks and stuff in place, which brings you to another point.
They're not specifying the class of your CDL.
They're not. But they had 1,000 trucks leave the market. And then I saw an immigration attorney had put on a major news publication. I said, hey, listen, if you have papers, just quit. It said, if you have papers, not if you suspect with your papers. Like, if you got any kind of papers,
right,
just do something else.
If you are not an American citizen,
do something else.
Turn your CDL in.
Do something else.
Drop your keys, you're done.
Because they're coming. Do something else.
Yeah.
So you know what that does? Everybody's like, oh, like every somebody that's in another state that might see, like, you know what? We better get out of this thing. So it creates scarcity.
Yeah.
And I think that we're starting to see that because I just looked at a chart just a few minutes ago. I walked over and looked at a sonar chart and I was like, WTF.
You're like, what is happening in the market? Happening? We're gonna get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. But there's some things that's going on. And I think that when you have the presence of enforcement, and sometimes it's just the presence of enforcement that lowers the overall need for enforcement, right? Just because you got cops walking down the street, okay, I'm going to make sure my tags is right. You know what I mean? So it's like, just sometimes it's not even you getting arrested or you being, detained or whatever. It's just the presence that really leads to that.
So I want to add an interesting dichotomy into this because you bring up the budget for immigration and customs enforcement, which, as we know, has been incredibly beefed up. And we're currently sitting in the middle of a government shutdown. If you're watching this at the end of October, hopefully we're done by then. But that will also likely include some additional funding for ICE and for other immigration enforcement. But there's a really interesting dichotomy because on the opposite side of this sits the actual regulatory body over the trucking space, the FMCSA. The FMCSA has seen a revolving door of administrators. We're now at the point where the most recent one, Derek Bars, is almost just slightly confirmed, like he's one step away from being confirmed, right? The FMCSA is constantly underfunded. It is constantly understaffed. And we know that we are working this problem that is simultaneously, you got to attack it from both ends, right? You got to cut off both heads of the dragon here. The immigration problem, yes, but also the enforcement problem from the trucking industry as a whole. What are your thoughts on that disparity and difference in problem addressing that we're seeing? And how does that influence either the narrative or the conversation or how companies respond to this? You've got ICE, which is incredibly well funded. You've got this budget, this enforcement, this crackdown, and the FMCSA that's sitting on the other side saying, hey guys, what about us?
So whatever when you think about a message, whatever your head coach delivers as the most important part of what we're going to focus on, that's where the attention is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the campaign from Trump was just based on, his heavy campaign was on immigration. Like, it was heavily on immigration. So, of course, that's going to get the oil of the squeaky wheels. The FMCSA and the trucking industry alone is a part of an impacted place of immigration. To what extent, we don't know, because they don't even know how many non-domiciled CDL holders are in place, so they didn't know. I think that, to me, too, is that you think about Derek Barrs being appointed and being confirmed, which will be like 12 in the last, 2-3 years. It's
right.
Absolutely insane.
The revolving door.
It's just a revolving door.
That's a bigger problem in and of itself.
That's the biggest problem. Honestly, you think about it as like, if I'm constantly going through head coaches, it's always you hitting the reset button. So you're never going to gain any traction. So what are you gaining? You know what I'm saying? And I think that for me, I think that the FMCSA as a whole, and you look at it, I hate finger pointing. I just hate that. Like, to me, if you spend the first 8-9 months just saying, oh, well, look what I found from this person did this. Like, once somebody cleans out their office and you move your stuff into that office, that's your office.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me about any of the gum underneath the desk that you found. And if you focus on that, then we're going to divert us from what the real issue is. The FMCSA is constantly underfunded. I had a phone call with someone that was working with the FMCSA on the ELD issue. And he was like, I know, we know. We just got our hands tied because we got so many other things going on. I say to myself, just like you said, hey, you know what? Where's the love over here on the FMCSA side? You look at how many American lives have been impacted by the tragedies that take place out on the roads, which is tangible, which is, you can see it. It's out there in your face every single day. And that's the reason why I said non-domiciled holders, the CDL holders, are not the only issue that we need to focus on. And that's the reason why I'm so hell-bent on that. And there's so many things that we need the money for, and we're just not getting the attention.
So one of the other points that this issue has brought up, and this increased scrutiny in the industry has brought up, is how pervasive the issues are. And they don't just live in the fact that we issue non-domiciled CDLs. They're pervasive in the systems that we use. They're pervasive 100%. In the ELDs that we've been seeing now be regulated across the industry. They're pervasive to the fact where it leaks into the freight fraud system. And then it also adds visibility that exposes the other negative players, right? If you are a broker who doesn't care about who runs your shipper's freight, you are more likely to run into problems with this because you are not properly carrier vetting. And that means that you are now exposing yourself, your company, and your shippers to risk. And you're also exposing your carrier to risk at that point. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people forget, is that if you are a broker and you're not doing your due diligence, you are now dividing that responsibility and adding that risk exposure both ways, to your carrier and to your shipper, which is a problem. How do we hold people accountable when the system now goes 3-4 steps deeper? It's not just the carriers who have non-domiciled CDLs who are the problem. It's the brokers who are using unvetted carriers to do that. And then maybe it's also the shippers who are sourcing direct carriers and who are also doing that from an unvetted source. To me, I might be biased, but I always place the blame primarily on the shipper. Because ultimately, that's your product, that's yours. You're hiring somebody to move your product from A to B. You have liability on what you choose. You cannot outsource liability by saying, hey, I'm going to use Kaylee's Trucking Logistics 3PL, and now I don't have to worry about who shows up at my dock. If I've got somebody that shows up at my dock and I know that my product is going to go on that truck, which I serve my customers with that. That means that my widgets that go in this trailer need to make it to Laredo, Texas, so it doesn't shut that plant down. And then I see a truck that pulls up that I know that's not going to meet federal regulations. I got the guy walking up that can't speak English that I know, you know what, he's probably going to get pulled over and shut down. Now that's going to be a problem. It goes down to the shipper from my standpoint. One of my bigger issues with that, too, is that it's not enough visibility on that. Guy Fieri
just had a load stolen.
And you know what? Let's talk about this really fast because 60 Minutes ran an entire segment on this. And you know that the people in the industry who have been screaming this from the top of their lungs now for years are sitting there going, how is this just now being picked up by the mainstream media? When we've seen not small names be impacted by freight fraud before. Apple with a couple
100%.
millions of dollars worth of loads.
Yes.
Nike shoes, Nike to the point where they've changed some of their shipping practices to where they send single shoes instead of pairs, and then they pair them back up at the DC. Like that's my question, and I'll step off my soapbox in just a second. But how is it taking someone like Guy Fieri to say, hey, this is a problem that 60 Minutes needs to address, when we've been screaming it, the industry as a whole has been screaming it for years?
It's like, hey, you know what? My tequila got lost, and now I need somebody to be accountable. Now 60 Minutes goes crazy over it because now they're like, oh, there's a big problem. But then that just leads me to the bigger issue too, man, is that sometimes, your voice just doesn't have the amplification that's necessary. It's as simple as that. And unless a major, and I think about this too, and I don't want to say this, but I have to say this, and I hope and I pray that this doesn't happen. But what if that accident in Fort Pierce, Florida, that tragically killed those folks, what if that was one of the administration's family members versus it being, I think they were, forgive me if I'm mistaken, I think they were Haitian. What if the accident that took place here on Mother's Day in Chattanooga, what if that occupant was one? You see where I'm going?
Yeah, the spectrum of visibility is so dependent on the visibility of the victim sometimes.
Yeah.
And, that's, I think, what everybody here is saying is the family of 5 that was killed in Texas deserves just as much scrutiny as $28 million of stolen tequila does.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. Really? Really? Like what you just said. Like that family of 5 didn't get a 60-minute special.
Nope.
At all.
They got a really, really great special from WFAA in Dallas, Texas, and I'm going to give them and their reporters
shout out to WFAA. Shout out to them for that. Shout out to you guys for that. And I think that ultimately, though, like, why didn't they get a show ran on 60 Minutes on like, hey, what caused this? How do we focus on this not happening again? But you know what? They did a show on liquor, so I bet you those folks that are shipping alcohol now are probably going to look at it differently. And it's just. Man, we just focus on the wrong things sometimes. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's just we just focus on the wrong things.
And that's why we're here, though, because we're bringing it back to the right.
Yeah, we're bringing it back to the forefront. Yeah.
We're gonna get these voices amplified, and that's part of what we do with the long haul. That's part of what we do with Freight Waves. That's just part of our goal here. And sometimes doing that opens yourself up to a little scrutiny. I'll throw myself, vulnerabilities open. My DMs are always open. My comments are always open. Will you get a response from me? Likely no. If you come to me and want to talk college football, sure. If you want to talk about weather, sure. But I'm here. I'm available for scrutiny. I'm available for visibility. I'm available for vulnerability. I'm here for it. Sometimes it invites things that you don't want to hear.
Yeah, man. And the thing is that the funny thing about that is that, listen, I've not always been in, if you want to call a public eye. I'm a private person. You know what I'm saying? I'm from the old school. I mean, you think about this. I'm almost 50 years old, and I come from a place where the social media wasn't existent like when I was younger. So social media is real new to me because I've been growing in the social media journey since the MySpace days, such as everybody else. But I had more time before social media than not. You see what I'm saying?
This is going to expose my age. My parents never let me have a MySpace. They barely let me have a Facebook. Like, I think I was I like a senior in high school before they let me get on Facebook? And even then, it was like, Facebook was like starting to pop off.
I remember like when I was in high school, the internet just started. So like I remember like literally I had a printer on my Commodore 64 computer, and I had a printer on it, and I would literally print, like, I'm big sports guy, so I would print stats that was on ESPN.com, and for one page of stats, it would take like 3 or 4 minutes for it to go chin, chin, chin. Anyway, all right, I got off of that. All right, cool. So what's funny is that the last episode that we did was a banger. I don't, like, if you haven't listened to it, make sure you go tap in and you listen to it. And the thing about me is I'm different, man. Like, I'm I'm different. I fear no one. Like, my voice is my voice. You don't like it, then so be it. So we had an episode that we did, right? And it was a banger, man. And in that episode, and that's the one thing I can appreciate about you, is that you're not afraid to talk either.
Right.
So in that episode, we were talking about the whole non-domiciled CDL thing. Boom, whoop. Okay, cool. So we talked about it, but there's an overwhelming feeling that you have to sound like everybody else. You have to sound like the popular voice, because if you don't sound like the popular voice, you ain't with us, you against us. And so with that, I was going through and I got some, shout out to those folks that sent me DMs saying like, man, I got some incredible messages. Like, wow, we needed that. Like, okay, cool. But we had a couple that weren't so popular. And one of the ones that said, and I'm going to paraphrase what was stated just to protect the actual person or persons, but they said, hey, you know what? Look at these two. Freightwaves is gone woke, right? So I find that funny, and I want to address that really quick. And I want to first I want to take it back.
Yeah,
I want to take it back, okay? And I want to give you a little bit of a history lesson, if I may. So the definition of woke, and this came when I was growing up, like in my community, in the urban community, what woke means, and thanks, it's on your screen, back then, oh, you know what? I know what you're talking about. Hey, this guy right here, he's woke. He knows what's going on. He knows about everything that's going around him. We used to call the folks woke. They would have like the beanies on their head. They would be like really, really positive. They were talking about the New World Order, and they were talking about revelations and things like that.
Yeah.
Reading Revelation. That was woke.
it was mind open.
Mind
It
open.
was-
Like, you know what's going on around you. That was woke. But somewhere, some way, somehow, it turned into a bad thing to be aware.
Right.
But that's not it, though, because that's not what it is. It's got changed because if you don't agree, or if what you're talking about doesn't fit what we're saying, then you're woke. So I'm like, in my mind, I'm confused, which I'm really not because I'm smart. But I'm confused. I'm like, how you taking this word and like changing it like that? So like, if you walk around and like your dog's got a book bag on, you woke. Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Or if you've got you think about things a little bit different than where everybody else thinks, you're woke and you're put into this box, right? And I thought that was funny, and it comes from so much from the government, right? They talk a lot about, anti-woke, yada, yada, yada. Man, listen, man, my opinion is my opinion. Like, don't try to associate nothing with my opinion. I'm going to tell you what it is. That's just the type of person I am. And if you don't like it, cool. I'm not going to sit there and cry over spilled milk. We can have that conversation. You want to have that conversation respectfully. But that's a problem. Like, we can't even talk. We can't even have those dialogues. So then I thought it was funny when this tweet pulled up. The Department of Homeland Security, who's been really, really, really big on pushing, like, hey, we're going in and we're attacking, yada, yada, yada. They threw this tweet up. And I thought that tweet was really, really funny. And the reason why I thought this tweet was funny is because it says America for Americans, right? We are asleep no longer.
Today's episode is brought to you by Trucking Hub. Now listen, if you're still bouncing between 5 different logins just to run your trucking business, you're already behind. Trucking Hub is built by a carrier for carriers, and it puts everything under one roof, whether it be dispatch, safety, maintenance, and even accountant and a driver app. Their dispatch runs on PC Miler and Copilot navigation, so the miles are right the first time. Now the ELD is FMCSA certified, tamper-proof, and trusted since 2017. And if you want to keep it all in one lane, you can even roll in company phones, text and video, and fax backed by nationwide LTE. Bottom line, this is the kind of system that's you spend less time hopping and more time hauling. Plans start at just $29 per truck, no contracts, no hidden fees, and you can try it for free for 30 days. Check them out at their website and get your time back.
What does that mean?
We're woke. We have awoken. Awake is the noun or verb, awake, adjective.
It is.
Whatever part of speech it is, woke is derived from the thought of being awake. It's fascinating. And I think, we can address the details of this or not. Again, it's no skin off my back. It's one of those things you read and ignore, right? But the overarching point of this conversation is that we're at a place, and not just in the trucking industry, we're at a place from the globe as a whole where adding nuance to conversation, which is our entire goal in this dialogue back and forth, and our entire goal from everything that we try to do here from our platform, right, is to add a little bit of nuance, to invite conversation, to invite open dialogue, to invite good, kind conversation that's productive. That type of nuance is now taken into an extreme where you get called woke, which doesn't necessarily make sense. It doesn't equate, right? It doesn't equate. And I don't see it being a bad thing to open to that kind of dialogue and to be open and receptive to that kind of nuance. What I do think is important, though, is that the conversations that we're having, whether they're good or bad, classified as woke or not woke, whether they're whatever they are, they're exposing something bigger, and they're exposing this bigger picture where now we're getting to a point in the trucking industry and out of the trucking industry where we're seeing more people turn around and say, hey, maybe it's not me versus you. Maybe it's us versus the system that was set up to designed to make us fail. And if I get shot down, cut down on social media for saying that, but the end result is still us getting to a point where we say, hey, we're coming together and it's us versus the system now, so be it. Like that's what we all want out of this, right? Is sitting here and having this type of conversation and dialogue that invites a back and forth. It's respectful. That's what we need. It's kind and respectful. But ultimately we get to a place where we can say it's not me versus you. It's not us versus them. It is the collective versus the system. That's what I want.
I agree. And the thing is, this is a camera I'm looking at. I'm talking to that camera right there. This is my platform that I have the ability to speak and say what I feel, how I feel, and out of what my lens is as a trucking industry participant, advocate, somebody that's been in the grind, has been in the trenches, has been behind the wheel, has done it all. I have that ability to say what I want to say and how I see it and how I deem fit. And the thing about that is that that's what we are afraid of more than anything, is that we're afraid of the First Amendment, which is the right and the freedom of speech. That's not comfortable. And then if it's not, let's just put it in this bucket. So I thought it was just super, super interesting. Mm-hmm. That's like a double standard, man. Like if you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's cool.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. I don't. But then you know what? Most importantly, I don't care.
And we're having the conversation.
Right.
As long as it's productive and as long as it's moving a step forward and as long as it's respectful, that's what matters.
Just make sure it's respectful, because Mike Tyson had a quote, and it's like the quote of a lifetime. Social media has made people so comfortable with being able to say disrespectful things without getting punched in the face. Mm. And I'm not going to literally go out and advocate for violence, and that's not what I'm talking about. But I want you to think about that. Like when you put something out there on social media, and like you want to get real disrespectful, and you can hide behind those dummy accounts, those fake profile pictures. You can hide all you want to, but like that really talks more of the type of character, person that you are, versus the person that's standing in front of the microphone, that's out there in front of anybody and everybody that can see them, and that stands on something, that stands on business that they're talking about. And that's the difference to me. So like, I know I wanted us to talk about that because there was a lot of things. Now, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of things about that episode that was positive. And I never usually allow myself to allow any of the negative, because like you said, it's like, okay, cool, read and go on. Mm-hmm. But that one got to me from the only standpoint is that let me go ahead and correct you real quick on what woke really means. Let's talk about that. Now tell me what your real definition is.
And now we've all learned something today.
Yeah, we learned something. Now you know what woke really means.
And hey, now we've got the platform in the place, and we can bring it back and say that we all want safe roads. We all want drivers taken care of. We all want freight that moves without incident. And we all want to make sure that we are working towards this together.
Absolutely.
That's the point.
Absolutely. And that
bring
was
it all
the
home.
Entire point was we want the same thing. Mm-hmm. Just because we don't agree with some of the components that you're using, because some of you are using it a little bit loosely and you're using it inappropriately to justify and bolster and amplify your own internal biases and bigotry, doesn't mean that we don't want what's right for this industry. I just said it in the very beginning. I'm not a fan of non-domiciled CDLs. Not at all. But I'm also not a fan of you being able to just go up and walk and be like, Kaylee, you look a little different. I'm going to treat you a little differently. I'm not a fan of that either. So that's what I'll say on that.
I love it. That's it. We want the same thing.
We're off the soapbox.
We want there. All right.
We're going to call it a soapbox. We're going to call that segment soapbox.
Soapbox. I like it. All right, we're moving on to the next one. We're talking about breaking the load board cycle. This is interesting because we're getting back more into the freight space and something that I think is important and is actually really, really valuable to our small carriers, who's of course who we're here talking to, right? Load boards are something that you see as this like inherent tool that you must use to be successful in the trucking industry. But how much of that is myth versus reality?
So one thing I will tell you is that when I started, and I don't want to continue to go back to that point, but I want to give you a little lens as to the difference in how things have changed. The reliance upon load boards is now more than ever because it's so simple to use. Buy a truck, get a DAT or a truck stop subscription, and you'll be rich for the rest of your life. That's the whole thing, right? But back when I started, like, we didn't have those electronics. We didn't have cell phones. So we didn't have those quote unquote load boards where you had all these brokers putting freight on there. You had to build relationships with brokers, and those few brokers are the ones that kept your truck moving, not going on to a faceless load board, not being able to, you really had to build relationships. You see what I'm saying? So with that, our whole model as business owners in the trucking industry, as trucking business owners, has changed. It's changed from buy my truck, build relationships, eventually get me some direct, to buy my truck, make sure I have a cell phone, make sure I have a subscription to a load board. And now the crazy thing about it is that, so I've been in conferences for the last 3-4 weeks, and I've been talking to a lot of people. And you know what, Kaylee's crazy? There are so many, and there's no shade, but I want to educate. There's so many people that I run into as a business owner and say, hey, you know what? What's the first step of me getting direct freight? I got to get off this load board. And then you go back to him and you ask him, do you have a website? No. Do you have it? Okay, what do you offer? You know, what is it about your trucking company that, you know, that we can go ahead and we can run and we can pitch?
Right.
And it's like, reliable. We're always on time. We are a family-owned business. Like, you can't take that to a shipper and say that you're going to give me, like, that doesn't benefit me any.
Yeah.
So a lot of business owners have abandoned the business owner concept. They get behind the wheel and they're really good at what they do as a driver, and then thinks that those are transferable skills, but that is not a transferable skill. And I think that ultimately what we're seeing, to your point, is because it's so easy to book it now. Like, you got it to a point now, you just book it now. They got AI to do the booking for you. It's so easy to do that. Well, you know, I'm a big fan of doing the hard things, because it's the hard things that you have to do is what's going to make you better in life. So, but to your point on that, that's one of the biggest issues that I see in load board cycles.
So the interesting thing about load boards and reliance on them, and if you're a new entrant into the market, is you kind of get into this place of like chicken or the egg, right? It's, do I spend the money that it takes to develop my business, or do I start chasing freight so I've got the money to keep developing my business? And that's how you kind of almost get trapped in this washing machine cycle. There we go. Got it. So, you know, you have to simultaneously be thinking about both, right? And that's where a program like Masterclass can come in really handy, because you do have the ability, if you're incredibly strategic, to go about sourcing maybe a couple of dedicated shippers and say, hey, you know what? I know that I'm new. I know that you guys are taking a chance on me, but let's build a relationship, get me a little bit of constant income, and then you flip around and say, let me develop my business. Let me build that website. Let me take some time off to find some marketing. Let me go and hone my skills via roadmap or masterclass or something like that. And then you're able to go back out and say, okay, now I can enter the load board as not just a player, but as a strong and a preferred player.
That's correct.
And then you're able to develop a relationship quicker and deeper. And then you now limit yourself to exposure.
You know, I will take it a step further on that. And what you hit was very, very important. But I'll even take it a step further to go back to just the basics. People really just don't know how to talk to each other anymore. People are not, we just talked about that. Like, you got people who don't know how to have a conversation a business conversation with another business entity.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know where to start. Some people don't even know where to start when it comes to having that conversation. But you said the chicken or the egg. I think ultimately, when you're starting a business, if I'm going to say, all right, Kaylee, you know what? I got a great idea. Let's open up Kaylee's Crab Legs. Let's build a restaurant and open up Kaylee's Crab Legs. If we started today, I just came to you today,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, okay, the first step, what we need to do is go buy some crab legs. You would look at me like I'm crazy.
I'd be like, Adam, the first step that we have to do is build some inherent trust between us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't even know who the hell you are for real, but like, but you're like, okay, cool. Let's back up.
Yeah.
Let's be strategic. Let's find a location. And I'm just going to rattle off what I would do. Find a location. Let's do some market analysis and research. Let's plan a menu. Let's find some food service distributors.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and build a brand, get a logo. Let's do all of that stuff. And we ain't buying crab legs until we hire the wait staff. Like, We're not buying crab legs until we opening up on Monday night.
Right.
But why is it different to where I'm just going to buy a truck? I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a truck. I heard and I see people out here at truck stops and they tell me that they're getting money. I'm going to buy this truck and I'm just going to hope. And I'm going to hope, but most importantly, I'm going to tell you what I see more than anything else. I'm entitled.
Mm.
I buy a truck. I put all this money into it. I go to the load board and I pull up a load and I call a broker on a load. I may have bought a box truck. And I call that broker and I say, no, I'm not moving my truck for less than $2 a mile.
You're going to get click.
But I want to back up because I'm probably going to get pushback on that. But I want to back up and say, okay, you know what? Before we even got into the business, we didn't even do a cost analysis on whether or not it's going to even work for us or not.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people that had truck notes, $2,800, $2,900, $3,000, $3,100, $3,200, $3,300 a month.
Yeah.
I'm talking about these expenses that we didn't do an analysis in the beginning to determine on whether or not we should buy the restaurant or not anyway, because it might not even be profitable. Because a lot of times the things that we want to do may not be what we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I will tell you that part of that in entrepreneurship as a whole is entitlement.
Mm.
Because I start a business, you need to pay me what I'm worth. It don't work that way when I have options to say, you know what, I got Kaylee, she's way more trustworthy. I've been dealing with her for so long. Like, if she's got trucks, I'm gonna give her the business first. Like, who are you? You brand new. But I think that for somewhere we got lost in that place, and then especially with the technology, it makes it so easy for us to just not even do the right things anymore.
All right. So to wrap up the section really quickly, breaking out of that cycle, you're a carrier who's maybe, you're not new, you're not brand new.
Yeah.
You've done the right steps. You've gotten yourself, let's say like 80-20. You operated 80% correctly, 20% you tried to take the easy way a little bit. That's how you found yourself trapped in this load board cycle where you say, well, man, I can't break out of this. I can't go and no one wants to give me a chance. I can't make these direct connections. I can't break out of calling a broker and then having to negotiate down my rates. How do you get out of that? What is the number one thing that you can do to break the chain and start getting into a place where you're now working for yourself and you're running in a more strategic way?
You got to back yourself and make yourself more desirable. I think ultimately one of the things is that the more desirable that you become in any business, whether it be trucking, whether it be doing hair, doing nails, restaurants, you have to be the most desirable to have the most people.
And let's be clear, desirability does not mean you're cheap.
No, it doesn't.
Because that's something that I think gets conflated sometimes
No.
in any service industry, right? I will make myself more desirable if I offer a cheaper rate. Totally wrong. Up your quality, maintain your prices, develop your business.
There you go. Because if you put a McDonald's beside a Five Guys, is that the burgers and fries people? Five Guys?
Sure.
Like, so if you say, hey, I want a good burger and I've got $30 in my pocket to just spend on whatever I want to spend,
I'm not going to go buy 8 McDoubles.
no, I'm not going to buy a Big Mac with extra pickles and lettuce. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to a higher quality. And with higher quality, sometimes it comes with higher prices. But the thing about that is that you have to make yourself more desirable as a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Desirability comes in a lot of different ways. One of those ways, like you said, is your service quality. Service quality has got to be differentiated, in my opinion. Service quality has to be differentiated. And what do I mean by differentiated? So if I'm a box truck owner and I'm going to go look for a shipper, and I know that I have competition. I have other box truck businesses. They're probably doing the same thing. They probably got straps. They probably got a pallet jack. They probably got, easy tracks, things like that. Okay, they got the same things that I have, but what can I do that makes my service different? Number one, I'm offering white glove service, and I'm telling everybody that I'm going to do that, because more than likely, you're not going to want to go white glove service. You're not going to want to carry the furniture on the inside of a residential house, but I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do. Number two, I might offer that multi-stop. And when I do multi-stop, I might have to say, hey, I'm going to have removable bulkheads so that I can make sure that the product doesn't touch each other. The product doesn't even see each other. These are real, true differentiators. Number three, I might say that I'm going to offer real-time visibility to where I'm going to use something like Tariffs, where I can stick a sticker on a pallet, and you as a shipper don't have to worry about logging in, calling, looking at my ELDs or anything. You can actually go online and find the location of your product, see the temperature, the humidity, you can see the condition of it, and see the things that you need to see about it. So when I look at differentiators, what makes you different?
Yeah.
What makes you stand out? What makes you more desirable? It's the same reason why Five Guys is different than McDonald's. Mm-hmm. They have the same thing. Their menu is pretty much the same. Burgers and fries. And McDonald's has got more on their menu than Five Guys.
But Five Guys does those sweet, sweet Cajun fries. And
they be putting too much salt on them, though.
That's a lot of salt.
And the bag, it'd be all greasy.
It's all soggy. It's all soggy.
But they got that desirability.
Right.
And that's the difference as a business owner. How do you make your business more desirable? And as a trucking company, it is no different. The thing about it is that when you pull into a truck stop at night and you mosey on and you back up into a parking spot, you know all those trucks that are parked in there, you know what they are? Competition.
Mm-hmm.
So what makes you different to where you stand out? And I'm going to tell you, I used to do little cheesy stuff. Whenever I'm going to a shipper or receiver, I drive in my comfies. Mm-hmm. When I hop out, I'm throwing on the Dickies. I'm throwing on a collared shirt. Mm-hmm. I'm clean. I got my pens, and I'm not signing with their pens. I'm signing with my own pens, and I leave my pen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're I'm doing little things to market myself, because it's all about marketability. Yeah. So I think that's most important.
And I'll wrap this up before we move on to our final section for today by saying something that, I love my dad. Love my dad. My biggest inspiration in my life. I credit him for so many things of what's happened in my life. He taught me something that I think applies to all business owners. It applies to everybody in the trucking industry. You don't necessarily have to up-level yourselves by something that incurs cost.
That's right.
We just mentioned that you don't have to cheapen and devalue your services financially. You also don't have to spend a ton of money to make yourself more desirable either, right? My dad, Keith Nix, taught me three things: be dependable, be accountable, and be honest. I'll tack on to that in this industry. Work harder than the person that's parked next to you at the truck stop, and you have just immediately up-leveled your business, and you haven't spent a single cent to do it.
Message.
Write that one down, y'all.
Message.
That one's on the record.
That is,
we'll move to off the record for the last one. We got a little bit to go through to wrap us up. We're at the start of October right now as we're recording this segment. There's some crazy things happening in the market, but before we get there, let's wrap up September. End of peak shipping season on the ocean, at least. All of our import goods for peak season for the holidays 2025 are here.
Yep.
What happened? Things were, I think, better than expected, but also simultaneously worse than expected.
Yeah, so when you look at the overall containers that made it to the marketplace, that's first. And then you got to look at the ones that cleared customs, right? So the ones that actually made it to the actual shores were on a decline perspective. But there were so many that cleared customs over the last couple of weeks coming out of the port of LA, the port of Oregon. Those ports are really showing that, hey, week over week and month over month, that the cleared custom, which is the freight that's already been approved to put on a truck, you're starting to see an increase of that. But, obviously that's going to have a little bit of noise in it due to some of the tariff stuff that's been happening. It's kind of back and forth. But we have seen that. When I look at the NTI, though, it has been the most flat, the most annoying thing to watch.
Yeah.
It has been listen to what I'm telling you. I do a small carrier market update every single Monday. Yep. You find it right here, Monday or Tuesday. 1 or 2 days anyway. I do a small carrier market update.
Week.
Well, it started the week at 11 o'clock, either Monday or Tuesday. And I swear to you, for the last 6 weeks, to NTI, 231, 233, 232, 231, 232, 233. It has not moved. It's been stagnant. And then you look at volumes, overall volume still hovering around the 10,000 mark. We lost about 1,600 points at the end of September. And then we kind of bounced back up again, which is telling us that there's probably some seasonality in there, some holiday stuff in there. So we watched the overall volumes drop in terms of, it is just not showing there. We watched import volumes drop as well and not really start to ping.
Yeah.
But I can tell you who's winning? Reefers.
Really?
Yeah. So when I look at the outbound tender rejection index of reefers, they've continuously been around at 12, 13.
Yeah.
But most importantly, since like August, their spot rate has continuously grown every single week. It's like 260 something now. And the crazy thing about it, it's the only thing that I've seen all year long that's showing a steady increase, no up, no down. It's just been kind of slow going up into the harvest season. So I don't know. It's probably something interesting that I've seen, but that's probably what we're seeing from the marketplace as I see it.
It's interesting to watch. And you mentioned import volumes, which is something that you can go check out on our Sonar platform. Go check out IOTI, or inbound ocean containers. The thing that I think has really caught people's eye, or actually, let me back up. The thing that hasn't caught people's eye, because it's been lost in the tariff noise, is the other type of geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, particularly with trade talks between the United States and China. U.S., the beginning of this year, the beginning of the Trump administration, we saw a pretty big formal audit that actually came out of the Biden administration where the U.S. said, hey, you know what? We found some anti-competitive issues that are going on with the Chinese shipping industry. We're going to slap on port fees, and we're going to slap on import fees, and we're going to slap on container fees, and we're going to slap on container line fees. Well, now China, as of about the end of September, has come back and slapped that back in retaliation to us. So tariffs are, of course, getting the hot button, the sexy, the big headlines about what's happening in geopolitical tensions. But things like that are going to have these very subtle impacts, which will end up impacting import volumes. Maybe I would even venture to say even more than what tariff uncertainty will do. Because at the end of the day, if you're an importer who really, really needs your goods, you're going to pay the price of tariffs to get them into the United States. If you're a container shipping line who now has to adjust your pricing and adjust your margin expectation for these additional fees, you'll blank your sailings. You'll just simply say, I don't want to deal with that. So that's something that I think is not getting enough mention right now and is not getting enough headline. If you're not paying attention to it, even if you don't have anything to do with ports or drayage or anything like that, take a look at it because we'll see the impacts down the line in intermodal and eventually we'll see the impacts down the line in trucking as well.
I agree. I totally agree.
That brings us to one of the last questions, Adam. If you ran a small fleet right now, we're both going to give our little 2 cents on this one. If you ran a small fleet right now, you would blank.
If I ran a small fleet right now, I would double down on building my Rolodex of shippers that I can connect with in my local area, my immediate area, because I have a feeling, and this is my opinion, that capacity is going to tighten and shippers are going to start losing out on options. I think that they're so afraid with what's taken place over the last 3 years in terms of volatility, in terms of freight fraud, that handling goods through 3PLs and things may not be as favorable. And I'm not saying that in no way that brokers and 3PLs are no longer going to be in the picture, but I think shippers are going to be much more open-minded. And that's just coming from a conference that I attended to as well, getting that feedback that shippers want to talk to small carriers. They want to see, they want to have those conversations and see where it can go. But you got to bring something to the table, or you can't just come to the table with an empty plate and you didn't bring any macaroni and cheese to the cookout, you know? So
I get it. I get it. Okay.
Macaroni and cheese. Though. You can't have a cookout without macaroni and cheese.
Absolutely not. All right. I'll give you my 2 cents.
All right, what's yours?
If I ran a small fleet right now, I would make sure that every single one of my assets is in perfect compliance with every type of safety requirement I need. Because
tell us.
Because we've talked a lot about the ELP mandate. We've talked a lot about the non-domiciled issue. What we didn't touch on is the increased scrutiny in inspections.
That is true.
And that's something that I think is incredibly important, right? Part of what we're seeing, a situation in Oklahoma just came up, right? ICE and the expanded budget has allowed for officers to find their way into truck stops. That means that they are stopping more and more trucks. I saw a tweet, I think it was either the day before yesterday or 2 days ago, that was like, man, if you don't want to run into ICE, just like skip the way station. And somebody replied and was like, no, man, I skipped the way station and they hunted me down like 15 miles down the road. That means that the increased scrutiny is not just in this situation where they're looking for people who possibly or might possibly not be a part of the ELP enforcement or might not have a non-domiciled CDL. If they're stopping everybody, you are getting scrutinized whether you want it or not, which means that you open yourself up for risk if your assets are not in tip-top running shape. We're out of the summer issues where we're out of CVSA Safe Driver Week, we're out of our roadside inspection week, and I feel like things tend to fall by the wayside, especially as you get into colder months. You're a driver, it's the middle of December, you're in, middle of nowhere, Wyoming. You don't want to do your pre-trip and you figure out that you've got two taillights that are out. You get pulled over and now you're placed out of service because of this violation. If you're a small fleet, you can't afford to do that. Make sure your assets are in tip-top shape, knowing that increased scrutiny is happening across the nation, regardless of if you are ELP compliant or not.
That is a great call out, because I think that when we looked at the increased amount of inspections just over the last 30 days, it's been mind-boggling the amount of inspections they actually complete now that they weren't able to get knocked out before, which is another interesting topic, but I'm glad that we'll hit that.
We're going to have to hit that the next episode.
We're going to have to hit that on the next time. But anyway, as always, thank you for joining us. And today was just a phenomenal call or whatever we call this podcast, this episode, this dialogue, the whole 9 thing. And that's going to do it for this third and long editions of Long Haul. So big thanks to my co-host, Kaylee, again, bringing the heat with it, chopping it up with me today. We covered a lot. When we talked about everything from tariff hits coming down the line to the impact that crackdowns or immigrations are having on real people out here trying to make a living. And I'll say it again, it's not about picking sides, it's about telling the truth. Trucking's got enough noise. What it needs is more real talk and fewer excuses. So if today's episode made you think, if it made you mad, if it made you nod your head and say, finally somebody said it, then do me a favor, share it. Especially if it made you mad, share it, because I want to see more mad people. Send it to another driver, a dispatcher, or that friend who's always got something to say about rates, but never about responsibility, about building their own business. And make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening. Plus, do me a favor, sign up for the Long Haul newsletter at www.freightwaves.com/playbook. That's where we drop all of our weekly breakdowns, market updates, and behind-the-scenes stuff we can't always say on air. I'm Adam Wingfield. This is The Long Haul, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay sharp, and you know what? Stay in the fight.
Hey, and you know what? We'll see you at the Future of Freight Festival.
Oh, yeah, F3.
The next episode comes out. Adam, I got to know. You're going to be on stage a lot. Do you want to borrow one of my blue dresses?
No. Now you're really going to start up a different conversation. All right, y'all. And that's just for this one. Take care, everybody.
See ya.